There we
Yep.
go.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the King's Couch. And this is our first Zoom interview with anybody. And I have the pleasure of interviewing an old friend of mine, an amazing musician with an amazing story to tell, Mr. Greg Kuehn. He's well known for being the keyboard player of the band T.S.O.L. And on top of that, he's a very amazing composer and songwriter. So Greg, how are you?
I'm good, Sulo. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So like all guests I have on the show, I like to go back and start from the beginning, how you got inspired to become a musician and how music resonated with you. So let's start there.
Well, I was my mom's a singer and it was a music teacher, and there's a lot of music in our family. And I played piano since I was a little kid. I guess I was probably like 6 when I started taking piano lessons. But even before that, I mean, my mom tells me little stories about, oh yeah, you'd be up on the piano and banging away. So I mean, I just have it in me, man. And I'm one of those kids that like, I took piano lessons, but I wanted to practice. Like I really enjoyed it. And so I was kind of locked in pretty early. But I had one really great teacher who encouraged me to write music. And so even from the age of like, 8 years old or whatever, I was playing my own pieces at recitals and stuff, so that was kind of cool. And it kind of gave me the bug, and I'm a huge Elton John fan, and I was like, man, I want to do that, whatever. I mean, it's like he plays the piano and sings and stuff, and I'm not much of a singer. But that thing, just kind of getting locked in by that, my older brother's records and stuff, and just, I mean, I was in from an early age, but I was that kid who would actually practice the piano, I mean, I wanted to take lessons. I wanted to keep doing it. I enjoyed playing. And when I got that bug to kind of create too, like that was a really cool component. Because, I played a lot of classical music and, work on all that stuff. And I did like these juries and all that kind of stuff. But there was always the thing of like, you can make your own stuff up, and just having permission to do that is a really cool thing to give a young musician, because like a lot of times people think, well, I could never write music. I could play music, but, so I felt like, yeah, I can make up my own stuff from the beginning, so that was kind of a pretty cool foundation to have.
That's cool. And was piano your first instrument that you picked up?
Yeah, that's my first deal. And then but I play a lot of different instruments, but I played bass when I was a kid, like a early teen. So if you're gonna be in a rock band, it's kind of like, well, you gotta have some other gig, and so I was like the little John Paul Jones kid who'd play bass and keyboards. I loved that Zeppelin, man. So that he was my idol. John Paul Jones was the guy. So that's cool. It's like I'm gonna play bass and play keyboards. And then I picked up guitar when I was like, I guess probably about 14, 15. And I really got into classical guitar for a few years and finger picking stuff and all that. And so, yeah, so I tell people, it's like, well, anything with frets or keys on it, pretty much I could figure something out. Like I got a wall of other, like not like playing gigs with them, but I mean, if you give me a bouzouki, I have one and I'll fuck around with it until I come up with something cool on it, I mean, sometimes I need to like refresh and review, but yeah, but yeah, piano has always been the foundation, kind of my main instrument for sure.
That's actually what I started with too, and I just got bored with it.
Yeah, well, that happens a lot. I know, it's so funny. I'm like the total anomaly because it's like I never stopped taking lessons. I mean, eventually you do, but I mean, all through all through high school, and I was when I joined T.S.O.L, I was a classical piano major at Cal State Long Beach. I had done 1 year. So I joined T.S.O.L when I was 18 and I'd finished a year of college. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to go do this now,
Were you part of the first incarnation of T.S.O.L?
I joined in 1982 for Beneath the Shadows. And so, but I was a fan, I mean, I'd been going to see him play. And so, when the first EP came out and danced with me, they're a couple of years older than me. So I would go to the Cuckoo's Nest, and I had a friend of mine, Gil Ogden, was this friend from high school, and he was the bouncer there. He was this crazy, like really tough kid, wrestler, yoked up guy. And he got this gig I don't think Jerry Roach even knew how old he was. He was 15, bouncing at the Cuckoo's Nest, but he looked like a grown man, and he was tough as fuck, and he would get us in. And so I was going to the Cuckoo's Nest from a real young age, and I saw a lot of those early T.S.O.L shows, and I was a fan, man. And then to have the honor of joining them a couple years later was pretty rad. Yeah, because I was
really cool documentary I found on YouTube all about the Cuckoo's Nest and those days, and how big of a staple that was for punk rock and shows back in.
Oh yeah, man, it was our CBGBs, for sure. Was it Clockwork Orange County, that one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I did the music for that too, and I'm
really how ironic.
yeah, no, it's funny, and I'm in it a little bit too. But yeah, that guy, the director Jonathan Mills, is a really good friend of mine. We met on that, but we've worked on other stuff together since, and yeah, he's really cool. But that's a cool story, man. I like it. Yeah, all those, and it's funny because me and Steve Soto knew each other from like church camp. Like we both went to Quaker church, and so we knew each other from like 12 years old. Didn't know each other that well, but it was like, oh, music guy, and we sort of knew each other and stuff. And me and Tony from the adolescence actually went to middle school together, and so it's fun. It's just so rad that to have those kinds of rest in peace, Steve. But we stayed friends, man, and we were really good friends till the end of his life. And Tony and I are still pals, and to have these friendships and relationships that go back like, a long time, man, like over 40 years, some of them, so.
Yeah, lifetime friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that whole era of punk rock, I'm in my early 40s, so I totally missed that window of the 80s and the late 70s. But I love hearing stories about people joining their favorite bands, going from being fan to, hey, I'm the new singer of Black Flag,
right.
Stuff like that.
No, it's so rad, man, because I'm telling you, I saw a lot of bands at the Cuckoo's Nest, and I went to a lot of early punk shows, and man, there's nothing like a T.S.O.L show at the Cuckoo's Nest. It was just like, what the fuck? It's like Shark Frenzy. And I was a little kid, man, but it's just like, they're playing Sounds of Laughter, and it's just like, it's like this thing, and so yeah, I was totally a fan, man. I love them, and it was super cool. I always thank Dave Vanian and Captain Sensible, because we've played some shows with them, and I know them. I've worked with Dave a little bit, and it's like, if it wasn't for the Damned, who knows if I would ever been in T.S.O.L, because T.S.O.L was expanding anyway, but it's like certain bands kind of gave permission to use keyboards and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of keyboards in punk rock, but not as people don't think so. Like the Stranglers, man, I love the Stranglers.
Oh, the Stranglers, great example.
One of my heroes, man. And then you listen to Machine Gun Etiquette, and Captain's playing piano on it, man. I mean, that's early. That's the second Damned record. It's crazy,
Yeah, the Addicts with that, what was that, fiddle player?
Yeah, true. Right. Yeah. So there's room for a lot of different elements in punk, but particularly keyboards, and particularly the Damned, because I'm a huge Damned fan, and we had that in common. So Ron's everybody in the band is a big Damned fan, and so I mean, to listen to the Black Album and then get asked to join T.S.O.L, I was like, what the fuck? Okay, yes, I know exactly what to do. So yeah, so it's super cool. Yeah.
Awesome. So speaking of being a fan, for all the viewers out there, T.S.O.L is one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time. And I first met them at Warped Tour. I believe it was 99 or 2000. I'm not sure if you were on.
I wasn't back in the fold at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, that was after Todd Barnes had already passed away, I believe.
Yes.
I think it was 2000. Yeah, because that was the year the Lunatic Chicks played, and I also met them too.
Oh, right.
And that's a whole nother story. I actually just saw them in Vegas at Punk Rock Bowling. It was
that's cool.
A great experience. But first person I met was Jack, and I had discovered T.S.O.L through the movie Suburbia years before. Right. And I thought they were so different, and I just connected with T.S.O.L and everything about T.S.O.L instantly. And Jack was the nicest guy in the world and gave me his number. I remember even calling him when they were recording for Nitro Records. I can't remember what album that was, but he fully took the time to talk to me for like 20 minutes on the phone. I was like, dude, aren't you in the middle of a recording session? So long story short, years later, I became a concert promoter. I remember being a kid going to all ages shows and wanting every aspect of it, being in a band, booking my own shows, opening up for my heroes. And with T.S.O.L, I accomplished all those feats. I went from being a fan to working at a venue where you guys played, to booking you guys, to opening up for you guys, to eventually crossing off the last thing on my list and recording you guys at my recording studio that I used to own, which was an amazing experience. So I can't think of another band that I had that kind of connection and lifetime friendship with. And you guys have just been so stellar, so killer, so kind, and so supportive. And, it's amazing to have you on this show and just, share some of these old stories and just talk about the old days and just chit chat.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, thanks, Sulo. We appreciate it, dude. Because, when people have enthusiasm for it, and when people want to I got this cool idea and we're, and I want to do this thing and let's do a show and let's do, we get off on that because, we're old and jaded. So it's I'm not jaded but that's how you stay not jaded. You gotta it's when people are enthusiastic about it, you feed off of that. And that's definitely the case with you, man. We dig you and appreciate your enthusiasm and interest in making things happen. And we always appreciate that kind of dynamic, man, because that's, it's rare when people, when you connect on with people like that, so it's been a pleasure knowing you and getting to know you through all these things and getting to, see you grow with music and with the business stuff and the studio and all that stuff. It's cool, man. It's oh wow, now we're gonna do this thing. Oh, that's great. Yeah, let's go record at Sulo's place.
Yeah, it's what are you up to next, Sulo?
Yeah. Well, we try to say yes, man. At least my whole thing is fuck yeah, man, let's do it. Why not? I'm trying not to. I try not to think of reasons why not to do something. Sometimes things don't make sense or whatever, but generally it's yeah, okay, why not? Let's try it.
Yeah, that's kind of my sentiment too. Time management, everyone's got busy schedules and being in a band. And for the viewers that don't understand what being in a band is it's like being married to a bunch of dudes. And if you sometimes even add a female in the dynamic, it can get a little weird. We've even tried that and it didn't work out. But being in a band, you got to base yours. You can't just think the world revolves around your schedule. You have to be mindful that everyone's got a different life, around you. And especially when you go on tour, putting everybody in the same vehicle for that amount of time can be strenuous. It sounds exciting. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody out there that wants to start a band or go on tour, but it's easier said than done. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. So why don't we talk a little bit about some of your experiences, Greg, and just give people a realistic idea of what it's like to be in a band, deal with different relationships. You can even talk about, some of the experiences you've been through, battling addictions, fights. I'm just trying to give people a real idea of what it's like out there.
Yeah. Well, it is like being married to people and, but you just, I think a lot of it is just figuring out how you, instead of trying to change people all the time, you just go, okay, well, this is what this is our dynamic. There's a different dynamic in every relationship in the band, and just being cool with that and letting those things take their own course. And then, that's a big part of it. Because if you fight against that, or if you, get angry at your singer for being a singer, it's that everybody has a different kind of personality. And if you, typically singers have there's a certain vibe. For a guy to be dynamic on stage is going to have a certain character kind of thing. And you have to be cool with that. And you can't expect everybody to be the same. And so, because we're all different. So it's cool when that happens, when you get comfortable with that. And, look, T.S.O.L, I've known those guys, the same four dudes have been playing together. We've had some gaps and stuff, but 40, almost 40 years for me and for over 40 years for them. So, it's just a lot of it is just tolerance and just being cool with how other people are, and just just not worrying about it too much, and just stay in your lane and being cool with the different relationships that you have. And we're all sober, and that helps a lot, because we've had I've had problems with addiction. I've been sober for 20 almost 27 years, and the other guy's got a lot of time too. And so that, having that skill set of dealing with stuff is helpful. You know what I mean? And we wouldn't be a band if we weren't all clean. That certainly helps. But yeah, it's a dance you got to do. You got to you got to be respectful of who you're talking to and where they're at, and if they're having a bad day or whatever. Because at the end of the day, it's easy to take offense or say it's all about me, but it's not about me, man. You know what I mean? I try to keep my shit straight, but things come up and you got to deal with them the best you can. And I just try not to take things personally. I think that's probably the motto. The most important motto is not to take things personally, because people have bad days, they have things, and you just try to get to the bottom of things when there's conflict, and not, and figure out where we're all on the same page.
Oh, dude, trust me. I don't know if you realize, but sitting in my office at work, I work at a integrative and holistic medical center as a neurotherapist, a life coach, nutrition coach. So I got to practice what I preach every day. Right. Stress management. I'm trying to de-stress people, and I'm an empath. So
right.
It's easier said than done. So I can totally resonate with what you just said there. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your sons, because I got a little bit of history. I believe I booked either one or both of them at some point at the Jumping Turtle over the years. But yeah, let's talk about how you became a father and how rad it is to see them following in your footsteps.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I are still together, and we had kids young, man. I was like 26 when Elvis was born. My sons are Elvis and Max, and they play in this band called Fiddler. But they used to be in a band called the Diffs, and you booked them there. They were both in the Diffs too. Yeah. Okay. So Max is the drummer and Elvis is the guitar player. And so, yeah, I mean, it was cool because we were kind of just figuring it out as we went along, and they're 13 months apart. We had two kids right in a row. And it's like, whoa, okay, cool. We're parents now, but being a young parent is actually kind of cool. We were always the youngest parents. Like, it was like, Elvis was born in 90 and Max in 91. So, it was a trip, but it's a learn as you go program, but they were always into music and played from a young age. I got him piano lessons and stuff. And Max was always on playing drums since he was like 2, man. We got him a drum set on his first birthday. And he just resonated with drums. And, they will play a lot of different instruments, and they both played piano when they were little kids. And then they kind of, wound up, finding their instruments. And, they loved I didn't push the punk rock stuff on them. I mean, we listened to a lot of different kind of music in the house, but they really did gravitate toward that stuff. So my wife is an old punk. She's from Huntington Beach and was the first girl with pink hair at Huntington and all that. And so Robin. And so
I remember your wife. Cool. Yeah, she was always very sweet.
Yeah, you've met her. Yeah, you've met her a few times, I think. And so the kids just started digging through the crates, man. You know what I mean? Like they'd go to find our old records and listen to Germs, and and they had their little kind of phase when they were like 8 or 9, probably like 9, 10 or whatever, where they're 8 or 9, maybe, when they were, it was like Blink was big, and Green Day and all that stuff, and they really dug all that. But then, man, it was like once they dug in and like, wait, what's Circle Jerks? Wait, the Germs, what's the Screamers single? What's and so they were really, yeah. So that, like, their whole thing with the Diffs was like, West Coast punk rock 78 to 81 or whatever, you know what I mean? Dead Kennedys, Germs, Black Flag, little T.S.O.L, and they're probably, whatever, just that was their aesthetic. And as you might remember, the kid Richie, the singer kid, was like, he's like a little Darby, man. I mean, they had a cool vibe. And so it was fun for them because it was right around the time that I started playing with T.S.O.L again, because I'd been out of touch. I mean, look, I'm a parent of young kids. I'm trying to build a business. I'm writing music for movies and TV stuff and all that. And we were, we've always been friends, but you know, there's times when you get out of touch, and that was one of those times. But it was funny, right before the diff started, and right before I started playing with T.S.O.L again, that show at the House of Blues where the guy got shot. I was like, you know what, man, they're playing shows. I need to reach out. My kids are into punk rock. Like, we're gonna come. We're gonna come to the show. Oh yeah, yeah, come down. Like, well, okay, so my kids are like, you know, 9 and 10 or whatever. I was like, well, what's the bus? Where should go on stage? Okay, so we're on stage watching T.S.O.L's great show. It's all cool, really bringing back a bunch of memories and stuff. Dude gets shot 3 feet away from my son, and blood spurting out of this guy's face. It was like, what the hell? And it was a really a pretty gnarly event, but whatever. Things happen, especially.
What was going through your mind when that happened, when you witnessed
well,
that?
just keep them safe. But I mean, I realized it was like, oh, this, you know, this is not like, it seemed like, you know, there was an altercation. It wasn't like somebody's shooting up the whole stage or anything, you know. So,
did it create any kind of PTSD for your kid?
No, they didn't have anything like that. We just kind of laugh it off. It was like this crazy like jump start into punk rock shows, because soon after that I started playing with T.S.O.L again, and then my kids started this band, the Diffs, and then it was like, well, one of their first, well, they had played some house parties and stuff, but then they played the Grisham for Governor show, whenever that.
Oh, I voted for Jack.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I did too. Why not? You know,
dude, I thought it was genius.
Make it matter. So there was this Grisham for Governor show at the Henry Fonda in Hollywood, and so that was one of their first big shows. So it was fun for them because they got to play with, not just because of me, but they were good. You know, it's like there were these 10, 11-year-old kids who like were playing like the Germs, you know what I mean? And it was, and their songs were really good. And so the other bands noticed, you know, and so they got to play with a lot of their idols. And it was, you know, around that time, the early 2000s, that was a real punk rock revival. You know, a lot of the bands were playing again, and it was just, there was a cool thing happening, and they were part of that wave, and it was really fun for them. And it was fun for me too, because I hadn't even been playing shows much. I mean, I was in the studio all the time, so it was a really cool thing to get to be back playing with those guys, and you know, and have my kids play on some of those shows, and then getting to go see them with other people. It was funny. I was telling somebody a funny story about Keith wouldn't let them play with the Circle Jerks for a long time. I mean, they play with everybody, man. You know, and the Germs were actually doing shows because they had Shane West and they were making that movie. And so
I was working with Shane West's other band, Johnny Was.
Oh, right? Really?
I stopped working with him after the Germs reunited and started, you know, doing a bunch of dates and everything. Yeah, so that's interesting. You just brought that up.
Yeah, and that was that time, and they liked them a lot, obviously, because it was like, well, they're basically, you know, that they're kind of like the baby Germs, and so that was. But playing all those shows was a great experience for them, and getting to see them and those and all those contacts. But finally, it took him a couple of years before Keith would let them play with the Circle Jerks. He's like, well, we'll say, well, come on, Keith. Like they knew him, and you know, it's like Uncle Keith, but it's like, no,
a little crotchety.
Yeah, and he's like,
we play with Circle Jerks too.
Pay your dues, kids. You know,
right.
But it was funny because then when Fiddler was together, they actually, when Off came out, Fiddler actually opened up that they did play, the Diffs did open up for the Circle Jerks several times, but then when Off came out, they asked them to open up for them at the Whiskey at the record release of Off. So that was pretty cool, like full circle thing, you know.
Yeah, there was I think, yeah, my buddy Mario was playing drums in Off.
Yeah, Mario's great, man. Love him. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, it's always cool when you see, you know, your San Diego friends going off and playing with their heroes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like that thing, and we, you know, full circle goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
you know, being a fan and then being able to be a part of that band.
Yeah, you know? It is funny. My buddy Johnny Two Bags is out on the road with me first in the Gimme Gimmes, and John Reese is playing guitar, and I'm like,
John Reese,
yes.
Really? Wow.
There's two guitar players, Two Bags, Reese, and I love Rocket so much. I mean, I love that band. They're so great. I mean, I really, you know, I love them. So I got a heart place, and Hot Snakes, and there's so many great bands, man. It's like that's
a great documentary that came out a few years back, I think in like 2014, called "This Is Gonna Blow." I believe that's the title, about that whole era. I actually have it on my Google Drive. I can send it to you.
Oh, that's cool. I'd love to see
Yeah,
it.
it's a great documentary about 90s, Lucy's Fur Coat, Drive Like Jehu, all those
Right.
bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I remember seeing Rocket at the not the cafe. It was at the oh man, what's that club in Hollywood? Guy, I'm old and it takes me a moment to remember.
It's all good, dude.
Club Lingerie.
Yeah.
And just
Oh,
being
Club Lingerie. Yeah.
blown away, man. They're all wearing the bowling shirts and the thing, and they get the horn section, and just like, oh wow, they were so exciting, man. And that Scream Dracula Scream, I think, is like one of the. It's that, to me, that's probably my favorite rock record of the '90s, which is saying a lot, man. I mean, they're a great band.
Yes. Well, they're one of the most legendary bands to ever come out of San Diego.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to your kids for a second, you actually have played, or Max played drums for T.S.O.L, filled in.
He did, yeah. He had done it before, like even from the young age. Like I remember maybe like when he was like 15 or something. You know, Jack did this little stunt, like well, our drummer, who can play drums? We can play drums. You know, trying to come up on stage, and he played like World War III with us or something. And then he did fill in, like did a show at the Observatory, did a whole show with us. But then later, but just a few years ago when we played Coachella, we were between drummers. We've had a lot of drummers. Antonio's our drummer now, and he's great. We love him. But we were sort of between drummers, and Fiddler was not on tour. And I was like, Jack, listen, man, we got this show. It was sort of a one-off because we hadn't been playing a whole lot. And so I was like, let's get Max, man. That'd be fucking rad, you know? And so we did. And Max played drums with us at Coachella, and that was so cool, man. It was really
at the Observatory date. I think you guys were opening up for Pennywise or something like that.
Oh yeah, I can't even remember.
I remember that's when Jack was making his own like suit jackets or something like that. You know, the spray painted stuff you guys have for sale. Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
That was right when you guys released what was the name of that record? I think it was the last one you guys put out, actually.
Oh, right, Trigger Complex.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So that was so cool to have. Yeah, that's right, because Chip played on that record. Chip Hanna, who's a great drummer, and we loved playing with him, and still really good friends with him. But you know, sometimes these things just don't all line up like we want to. He lives in Arizona, whatever. But Chip had left, and then we got Max before we got Antonio, and so so that was a pretty magical little moment, you know, to be able to kind of play with my son at a show like that. Definitely a bucket list thing, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I was so stoked. Like I mean, especially with the history that I have with all of you guys, to watch that moment in front of a sold out crowd was just, as someone spectating from the audience, it was amazing to see that, you know.
Yeah. And you know, there is that thing too, like with my boys, like their brothers playing, I watch them play together, and it's like there's a connection. And you know, even with my sons too, when we play music together, it's like there's a connection that it's just, you know, I mean, it's there and you lock in, man. It's cool, you know. It's really, really, really great. So that was a neat thing to get to do.
I'm surprised they didn't interview you for the other F word, that documentary.
Well, it was done before. I actually did a song in that movie. I did a song with Dwayne about. There's a song I wrote with him about his kid Chess. That, you know, there's that really sad song.
Yeah.
And that's me. I wrote that and arranged and played everything on that too. Yeah. So that's
really
me and
that was a killer song.
Yeah. So I did have something to do with that movie. Yeah. But no, it was, you know, I'm actually friends with the director now, Andrea. She's great. But it was just one of those things where we, you know, it didn't make, you know, they didn't know, whatever. It's always like a certain scope of reference, and I don't think they really had that field of reference at the time. But then, you know, they did, man, we should have interviewed you for this movie. That's what it made sense. But I did have a little hand in it, so that was cool. In the post part of it, you know, like getting a song in there and stuff. So.
Okay, well, that's a great segue into our next topic. Let's talk about how you got into scoring.
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to do that kind of stuff. I always thought, wow, it'd be cool to do like music for film or whatever. And I'd always thought about that. And then, you know, I spent a lot of my 20s on the road with bands and stuff, you know, because after T.S.O.L, I played with Dylan, and for a while, and and then I played with the church from Australia, and I was in that band Berlin for, touring the world and
Wait,
doing
you
stuff.
were in Berlin for a little
I was
while?
in Berlin,
I
yeah.
love Berlin. That's so rad.
I played on that record, Count Three and Pray, which is like their last full album that Take My Breath Away and everything, So that record was that single propelled the big world tour, and I was on that, and I was like 87, I guess, or 86, 87.
That's a great record. I didn't know you played on that. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I got a checkered past, man. And so that, but I was like, man, and then my wife and I got married, and we started having kids, and I was still doing a lot of like recording and playing and stuff, but it was just like, man, I go, this is probably unsustainable, to do this road guy thing and touring musician thing, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. And I got a lot in, from a young age. So, I like the idea of doing music for stuff, and sort of stumbled into that. I scored some films. Me and Alex Gibson, who's the guy who wrote the music for Suburbia. Okay. He was an inspiration to me too, because I didn't really know him, but he was in a band called Bee People, who I liked and went to see, and I was like, well, wait, that's that dude from Bee People. How is he doing the music for a movie? Like I could fucking do that, Yeah. And so Alex and I became friends actually because I was on tour with the church, and his band, he had this band after Bee People called Passionel, and Passionel opened up these shows for the church. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is like 84. And so I got to know him. We got to be friends, and we were like, well, we got to do some music together or whatever. And I, because I sort of like held them up on a thing. I go, wow, Alex, man, he's that guy who did the music for Suburbia. And then we became friends, and we were writing some songs together and stuff. And then this movie thing came up, and they loved these pieces that we had. And we were just going to maybe make a record or something, but they wanted to use it in this movie, and it's called From Hollywood to Deadwood. And it was on Island Pictures. And it didn't do a whole lot, but it was, it was like on a major thing, and they had a budget, and they paid us money to write music for this movie, and we were green and everything, but he had done a little bit of that before. And so, but that kind of locked me in pretty hard, doing the music for that movie. And so, I sort of stumbled into getting gigs like that. And then I kind of, actually LA Gear was one of my first clients. Like they did these like promo videos. This is like in the Karl Malone era. Like
I know exactly.
Smashing the backboard. I did the music for a lot of those things, and then I just kind of kept meeting people and getting into that. And so the nice thing about advertising is they do have budgets, and so it's a nice way to make a living, and then you get to do other cool stuff too, and it finances things, and you can affords you to be creative in other ways and all that. So I just kind of kept stumbling into doing those kinds of things, and music for picture and stuff. And so that's kind of where it all started, though, doing the music from Hollywood to Deadwood.
Okay. So for some of the viewers, actually, what am I saying? For the viewers out there, can you just list off some of your top accomplishments?
I've done music I've done like music for like hundreds of commercials, like for Nike and Toyota and whatever. Tons and tons of that kind of stuff. And that's been the bulk of my career, really. But I think one of my favorite films that I scored was it was called Confessions of a Superhero. And it's a documentary about the people in front of Mann's Chinese Theater. And it has a kind of a little cult following or whatever. And so that was a really good one. And the same director, Matt Ogans, and I worked on this movie called Meet the Hitlers. It was all about people named Hitler. And I like scoring documentaries. That's one of the things that I really enjoy, because you really have to, it's a fine line. Like you can't push the emotion of the film too hard, but you also have to support things or what's happening in the film, and so that is it's a delicate balance and a delicate dance that you have to do to try to make things more emotional but not be too heavy-handed about it, so those are both ones that I really enjoy. And I actually played keyboards on the soundtrack to Repo Man.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I love that movie.
I was really good friends with the Plugs, and Charlie Quintana, rest in peace. He's a really great drummer. In fact, the Plugs were the first punk rock show I ever went to. Me and Tony Adolescent went to see the Plugs and the Crowd at this little tiny club in Irvine at the campus. It was called the Pateau Cafe. It was like this little tiny place, and they were having punk shows there. And this is, I mean, I don't know, probably, I guess like 79 or something like that, 78, maybe, probably 1979. And the plug, and I always like the Plugs, man. That Electrify Me record, oh my God. So if you don't know it, you got to check that out. It's great, man. They're great. And so when I played with Dylan, that Charlie Quintana was the drummer from the Plugs, was playing with Dylan too. We were both on this video playing with Bob, and I was so funny because people were like, "Oh, you're gonna do this thing with Bob Dylan?" And I go, "Well, actually, I'm more excited about meeting Charlie from the Plugs," but we got to be friends. And Dylan was like, "Hey, you guys should come up to the house." There was a bunch of musicians there and stuff in the video, but he, for some reason, he keyed in on us and was like, "Come up to the house." And so Bob like paid us to be in his band, and so we were, because he wanted to play with some younger guys and stuff and whatever. And so anyway, Charlie and I became friends, and through that, playing with Dylan, I wound up working with the Plugs a lot, and then they became the Cruzados later. But while they were the Plugs, they did the music for Repo Man, and so it was like a band. It was really Tito, the singer, and Steve Hofstetter, the guitar player, wrote the music, but the band played it, and they were, I was kind of like the auxiliary member, so I played, there's all that kind of like, oh, there was that emulator, is like old sampler, like early sampling. But they had, it was like, wow, we could do strings on the machine, fuck yeah, and so it was really fun. I was a kid, man, I mean, all this stuff, I was a kid. I mean, I was probably 20 years old when I did that, but that was cool. And we didn't know, I mean, we knew, we knew who Alex Cox was, because I think he had done Sid and Nancy, or maybe Sid and Nancy was after, but he had a reputation one way or the other. And it was
Sid and Nancy was, I believe, 85.
Yeah, so it was the next film, but we knew that he was a deal, you know what I mean? I met him and he was cool, and it was on Universal, Repo Man, so it was like kind of a big deal to be on this soundtrack and stuff. And so, but we didn't know it was going to be like this crazy cult thing, And so, that's me. So on the soundtrack, that song Real Tin, I'm playing keyboards on that. So, I mean, I'm playing a lot of keyboards throughout the whole score, but that's where I'm on the soundtrack. So that's pretty funny.
Kids, if you haven't seen Repo Man,
yeah, go check it
out.
It
down. What was that? Emilio Estevez, right?
Yeah, Emilio Estevez. Yeah, right? And Xander Schloss is in it too, man. It's pretty funny. And and then Suburbia, which was pretty funny because you said, I mean, a lot of people, that's their first exposure to T.S.O.L, and that was like, being in that movie was pretty fun too,
Were you there when they did the screening a couple months back? I forget what it was for, but what's the director's name? Penelope. Yeah.
Yes, I was there actually. Yeah, I filled in.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. She didn't go. She got sidetracked and didn't make it actually to the screening, but we had a screening down in Huntington Beach, and it was really cool. It was great, man. It was really fun to see the movie again and have people come out and ask questions and all that. And I'm trying to think who I filled in for. Somebody didn't show up, and I was just going to go because Jack was on the panel, and then they're like, you want to talk on the thing? I go, well, sure, I'll talk if you want me to.
That's awesome.
So actually, I was wound up being on the panel with Keith and I forget, we had me and Keith and Jack and somebody else. I'll remember in a moment. It always takes me a second to remember things, but yeah. So that was cool to revisit that, And the interesting thing is, we're doing a T.S.O.L documentary right now, and I just
talk about that and then the short films that you've been working on with Jack.
Yeah, okay, that'd be cool. Yeah. So the T.S.O.L doc, not doc, because it's actually what I've realized in talking to Jack yesterday, because I just saw the first cut of it a couple of days ago, because I'm doing the music for that too, and so it's really what it is a memoir. I mean, it has some things in common with documentaries, but it's not your typical doc. I mean, we're telling the story of T.S.O.L through a certain period of time, and it's really cool, man. I mean, it's mostly Jack telling the stories, and then but we tell some, we in an interesting context, because he's kind of doing it from the stage as sort of as a spoken word thing, and then we cut away to me and Mike and Ron, and we interject stories, and there's other people, pivotal people in there are roadie human t-shirt who, did all the T.S.O.L t-shirts and was a real close part of the band. And, and our old manager, Cindy Brahney, and Gary Tovar's in it, and Jerry Roach is in it. But it's cool because it's really the story of these, young kids doing this thing and, trying to forge new ground or whatever, just doing whatever we thought we wanted to. So that's really cool. And we're just digging in on it now. The film looks great. I mean, it's in really good shape. We're still waiting, there's an animation component that's happening now, and I'm getting started on the music, and but the basic thing is pretty together, and it's really cool. Yeah, I think
You guys have an estimated release date yet?
It's hard to say with these things, because even when you think you're done, it's hard to know what you're done. But I would say early 2022. We were kind of trying to think in terms of maybe South by Southwest this year or something like that, maybe premiere it there or something. So we'll see. That's like a goal, but you never know. I mean,
I can't wait, man.
yeah. No, it's really cool, and it's different. It's not like any other music doc.
Well, I would love to go to the release party. So
yeah.
Please let me know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so and Jack is directing it, which you could say, well, that's a little scary to have the singer direct a documentary about the band, but he is a filmmaker now. You know what I mean? And he has some experience doing that, and he has a vision as a filmmaker, and so it's cool. It's really cool. I mean, it's nice because we've had a long-term creative partnership, beyond T.S.O.L. I mean, we've done a lot of other music together. We've done the Keenan Jones Orchestra record, which I really love and was great. And we had this thing called Men's Club, and we did Cathedral of Tears together, and we've written all kinds of songs in different contexts, but working in this film context has been cool. And 288 was a really good one that we did.
That was the one about abusers, right?
Yeah.
I saw that one too.
Yeah, and it was heavy, man, but I thought it was really pretty brilliant filmmaking, because the way we made it was we got people telling their real stories. They're not acting, but the context.
I actually know one of the guys in that film, Spike Mike.
Oh, Spike? Yeah, he's great, man. Love him.
And he told me about those experiences way before you guys even did this. Yeah, I'm a pretty open book, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it comes to people. Yeah. That's what I love about what I do now. You know what I mean? I like to listen.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. And it is
offer support.
Yeah, right. And I think when people have a venue to do that, and so there's that component, but the other component is, and of course with everybody's permission, but telling people story and then recontextualizing those stories with sort of in a narrative context, right? And then we, and as from 288, there's like a villain guy who's fictional, but the stories are real, and they're just recontextualized to conform to this narrative, which is, I thought, was like, wow, Jack, that's actually
the curveball for me was watching Jack pop up in it. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I was not expecting that. And I didn't want to reveal anything because I want everyone to go out and watch 288.
Yeah. But it's a really moving film. And it's I really enjoyed doing it. I think it's really touched a lot of people. And I just think it's just cool to work with my friends in different contexts, and that was a really cool thing to work with Jack as a filmmaker, I mean, it's like, and so so it's definitely worth checking out, and it's been fun starting this journey of filmmaking with him, because I have relationships with a lot of directors, I mean, like Matt Ogans, who I mentioned earlier. We've done like 4 films together, and like a lot of advertising too. And, and I have long-standing relationships with a few directors, and I really love that. Besides the fact that Jack and I make music together and write songs together, that's a different dynamic, the relationship between director and composer. And I have that with several directors, and I really like that relationship we have in that context also, because my job is, if we're writing a song together, we're working on it, but usually film, there's something there before I start. There's a vision there that I have to conform to, that I have to support, that I have to make better, that I have to try to enhance, And so that's been fun, investigating that dynamic of that relationship, with a filmmaker, being that it's the singer of my band. But, we can, I can put on different hats as needed, you know, but it's great because he's gonna come up next week and we're gonna work on it and kind of I need to figure out where he's at and what I'm working on a little bit, and then we're gonna collaborate and figure out what we're doing with the music for the movie, and that's a really fun. I love that, you know, that whole creative stew and figuring out what it's all about, you know.
I've noticed over the years that you guys have like a synergy together. You guys love working together on all these various projects and songs and videos, and I just love seeing that kind of dynamic.
Yeah, it's just great to have. I love long-term creative relationships because, you know, you do get a shorthand and you kind of know what the other one likes and you trust each other. And, you know, I mean, look, I work with new people all the time, and that's fun too. And, you know, it can be challenging, you know, but it is nice when you go, okay, I know what I'm getting into for the most part, you know, but I don't know what I'm getting into too, because it's like, I'm not sure, like I've got ideas about, like, for example, with the T.S.O.L doc, I don't know, I have some ideas, but those we have to vet those ideas. We have to work together on those. We have to figure out what's going to make sense for the film, because it's not just what makes sense for me, but I still have to get my head around it before we collaborate. You know, I mean, I have to have a take, and it's okay if that take changes, you know, but I have to at least figure out what I'm thinking about it, be able to bring something to the table, and then go, oh, okay, this is what we're trying to do here. You know what I mean? So it's kind of fun to have that dynamic going, you know?
That's fucking rad, man.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And, you know, man, dude, I've known that guy since I was 18 years old, man. I mean, that's, you know, pretty almost 40 years, you know, so that's pretty crazy. Yeah.
It's been through thick and thin together.
Yeah, a lot of shit. Definitely.
Yeah, I love Jack, man. Like, he's kind of like my punk rock dad in a sense. And my own father has seen him speak at AA meetings, and would even come down to T.S.O.L gigs just to say hi and chat with him for a little while.
Oh, that's
sometimes
cool.
Not even stick around for my set or your set and just bail.
But just to come and say hi, pay your respects.
Pay his respects, you know. And
cool.
You know, just like you were talking about with your sons, my father was like my musical influence growing up. And then my mother always gave me a journal and told me to write. Still to this day, she's very supportive. Like for Christmas, she's all, I don't want any gifts. I want a poem from you. That's it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
you had a musician too? Does he play?
What's that?
Your dad plays too?
Plays guitar. He's more blues influenced by anything. Yeah, he just got a semi-hollow body. He's pretty stoked on a Gretsch or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Really? What do you know? You don't know which model?
I can't remember what model off the top of my head. I haven't even seen the guitar yet, to be honest with you. But yeah, we jammed.
Tell him I got a 1968 Gretsch 6120. He'll know what that is. Yeah. That's cool, man. Yeah, no, that's great, and that's one thing that I'm really grateful, because, you know, my dad's a lawyer, and my parents were evangelical Christians when I was growing up, and they were, even still, they've always been super supportive of music. And even when I said I'm joining T.S.O.L, the band with the I Want to Fuck the Dead song, they're like, look, and I'm going to quit college and I'm not going to be a classical piano player anymore or whatever, you know. They're like, well, you know, this is what you want to do. We support you, you know. And so I was very lucky in that way, and I tried to be that, you know, supportive of my kids in that way too, you know. And just like, you don't have to have something to fall back on. Fuck that. You'll figure it out. If it doesn't work out with music, then you do something else. But I mean, I don't have a backup. I never had a backup plan, and I never had to use one. I mean, but they know, they grew up in a house where it's like, sure, I was in bands and did that stuff, but they saw me hustling and, you know, writing music for stuff and, you know, whatever. It's like, you can't just do that thing. You got to do other things too. And so my boys, you know, besides being in Fiddler, they both compose and they both produce bands and they write things for different things. You know what I mean? They have relationships with the directors.
You gotta have backups. Like even when I had the studio, I had the valet parking business. I drove Lyft when I really needed money. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah, you gotta have a backup, even your backup sometimes.
Right. Yeah, you just figure out a way to make it work by any means necessary. You know what I mean? You just kind of go, okay, well, you know, figure it out. If you sit around and say, well, I want to be a rock star, I want to make a living doing music, it's like, well, maybe that might work out, but you know, we got to pivot and say, okay, well, what now? And my kids, you know, I would be, there's a lot of times when we would just be like killing it and be like, yeah, cool, we're gonna go to Hawaii for Thanksgiving and we're gonna go on vacations and do all this. And then when things tighten up, it's like, hey, you know what? Mac and cheese, we're going to the park, because that's the way it goes with music. You know what I mean?
No problem.
Yeah, exactly. We're roughing it for a while. But we had some of the best times when we were roughing it, and so they know, having grown up in that environment.
Struggle only makes you stronger. I always say
Yeah,
that.
it really does. And so even through all the COVID stuff of Fiddler they needed a break anyway. And they all made solo records and did stuff. And, and so, but my kids are smart about money, and they know how to they know that you can't just live like you're always, making it. And so, so they're good, and I'm so proud of them to get through this kind of a thing, without, we're still like keeping their thing rolling and staying happy. And Fiddler is going to get back to work in 2022 and do a tour and record and stuff. So it's nice to see things coming up, them getting through this and things coming back to normal,
Definitely tell your sons I said hi. I haven't talked to them in a long, long time. Hopefully they still remember me.
Yeah, no, I'll remind them. Yeah, the Turtle was a fun place, man. Remember Wrecking Crew too? Yeah.
Oh, Wrecking Crew, yeah. They
used to love playing
super influenced by the Adolescents.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And Joe wound up playing with the Adolescents, and Elvis and Joe are still.
I've seen them, yeah.
Yeah, and Elvis and Joe's still good friends with Elvis and Joe are still good friends and talk a lot and stuff. So yeah, that was a cool moment in time,
Well, I hate to wrap this up. We are running out of time. We only got maybe about 4 minutes left. So at this segment of the show, I like to have all my guests leave an empowering message or something to inspire the viewers out there, listeners. If you have a certain quote or saying or ethos in life, feel free to share with everybody.
Okay, well, that's a tall order, but I can say, don't take things personally. That's one motto that I live by. And, and realizing that it's not about your plans all the time. Pivoting is like probably the most important thing. I have different mottos that happen at different times, but at the moment, that's one that I'm really big on. I like the Stoics, man. I appreciate Stoic philosophy. And the thing is just recontextualizing when things happen. I don't really judge things as good or bad anymore. I just say, well, things happen and I'm along for the ride. And so I'm going to take another look at this. I'm going to reframe this and imagine that this is exactly how things are supposed to be. This is exactly what I want. And I'm going to, because what I've realized is the time that I waste is the time bemoaning those things. It's not the bad things, quote unquote, bad things that happen. It's the time wasted bumming out about them, And so if you can not bum out about them and just go, well, things do happen and we have to pivot and figure out how to approach it from a place of like, well, do I learn something from it? Or maybe it's something coming around the corner that I don't see. So I try not to imagine that I got it all figured out. And so I leave that I just show up and do my part, and that works out pretty good. I'll leave you with this. I just told my mother this one. It was pretty good. I read it in Ryan Holiday's Daily Stoic book, and it's about, they're talking about logos, and which is just sort of the life energy and the direction that life takes you, right? So it's like, so you're a dog and you're chained to a cart, and that cart is going down the road, and you have a certain amount of leeway on that cart. Well, you can yank against it, or you can stay up ahead of it, you can jog along the side of it and have a nice day. But if you pull too hard against it, you're just going to get dragged along, and life is going to take you in directions that you don't necessarily want to go sometimes, but that cart's going. So either you're going to get dragged along behind it, or you can get up ahead of it. You could run along with it and figure out where it's going and see that coming. So I love that. And that's one of my late sort of little mottos of late, that I love that little story. And just thinking about life in those terms, and I don't have a lot of expectations. I have a great life, man. I mean, I have a really, beyond my wildest dreams. So I don't worry about my wildest dreams anymore, because I'm given more than I expect. But because I don't expect anything, because I'm like, I don't feel like I'm owed anything, and I'm willing to take life however it comes at me. And so usually that's pretty good, man. And when it's tough and when there's difficulties, I don't get too bummed out about them. I just kind of try to pivot and, look at it a different angle and do my best to kind of like do my part as much as I can, So I don't know. That's what I got for today, at least.
Well, Greg, it's been a pleasure having you on the show once again, and it's a pleasure to just see your face. It's
great hanging out, Sulo. It's been too long, man, and I really appreciate our friendship and all the cool things we've been able to do together, and your friendship of the band and enthusiasm for the band and all that stuff, man. It means a lot to us, really. It does, and to me personally. So I'm stoked to get to do this with you, and I appreciate you having me on, man.
Definitely. All right. Any final words? Anything else?
Gosh, I don't know. Just enjoy life, man. We have a choice. We can enjoy it or not enjoy it, and I choose to enjoy it today, man.
Jack says, have a great day because it is your choice.
That's a good one. Let's finish with that. Have a good day because it is your choice.
So let's end with that. Have a great day because it is your choice. That wraps up another episode for the King's Couch. I'm your host, Sulo King, and this is my special guest, Greg King. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, Sulo. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, catch you later.